and welcome to Bookbusters! Bookbusters!
Bookbusters!
I'm Chloe, and today I'm going to be doing a book talk on All the Bright Places by Jennifer Niven. If you've seen my Book Depository unboxing part 2, you'll know that I just got that book from Book Depository, and in that video, I unbox it. I just finished it about 20 minutes ago, and I was so inspired, so I'm just here now and I'm going to shoot this video. Before I begin, I have several important announcements. Number 1 is not important. I dyed my hair again. It's interesting looking. Announcement number 2 is important, and it's related to announcement number 3. And that is, I started high school! And so did Ayana. And week 1 is officially done. That means we've been freshmen for 5 days. And seeing as we've started school, we have now created a schedule for the making of these YouTube videos. My assigned day is Mondays, which means every Monday you can come onto YouTube and see me talk about books. And Ayana will be making videos on Saturdays. That's at the beginning and the end of the week. On Mondays and Saturdays, you can tune in to watch Bookbusters. Now, without further ado, let's get into the talking of the books. I'm going to start with a really brief description of this book because I know some people don't like to know anything about it, which I can understand. Sometimes even knowing just a little bit is too much, and then the first few chapters, you just feel like you're reliving what you've been told. So basically, this book is about a girl named Violet and a boy named Finch who are learning to live together. They're both in their senior year of high school, and it's their last semester, and they're struggling with not only the normal high school stuff and the normal teenage stuff, like bullying and getting accepted to colleges and hormones and things changing in your life. They're also dealing with death. And when they meet each other, they help the other cope with the death in their life. I'm not going to go any more in depth than that. I'm being very vague here, and I know some people just want that vague and artsy description. So if that's enough for you, you can just click pause, go out, buy the book, and read it for yourself, and not let me tell you anything else. But if you want to know a little more background info, then stay tuned and I'll tell you a little bit more about Theodore Finch and Violet Markey. I'm going to stop holding this now because it's hurting my arm. Around school, Theodore Finch is known as Theodore Freak. And the reason for that is told slowly throughout the book as you hear more stories about his past, like the time he smashed a chalkboard with a table, or the time he got really angry at a certain boy and then beat him up. And these stories slowly tell you about how everyone sees Theodore. In the first chapter, Finch talks about a sickness that he has, but it's not a sickness that can be seen, like cancer or the measles, which is one thing I really liked about this book, because I feel a lot of books these days are about sickness, but they're about the sicknesses that you can clearly see. But here, Finch is not obviously sick. He describes his sickness as going to sleep, and that's with a capital A. So there's the asleep and there's the awake. And he talks about fighting to stay awake. And that struck me as a little strange, seeing as this little blurb right here, the girl who learns to live from the boy who wants to die, implies that he wants to die. But then in the very first chapter, he says, I don't want to die. I'm fighting to live. I'm fighting to stay awake and not go into the asleep. So that's something that I did struggle with during the book. But overall, I really liked how they described Finch's asleep and awake. So Finch fights the asleep by putting himself in near-death situations. And that is how the book begins. He's standing on the ledge of the bell tower at school with his arms out, and he's looking down and he's thinking about what it'd be like to jump, going so close that he almost does, but then he doesn't. And that is where he meets Violet Markey, who is our second main character. And after that, the book alternates between Finch and Violet. So that first chapter is him, and then there's her, and then it goes back and forth. Now, Violet is popular, cheerleader popular, as Finch says. But ever since her sister died in the car crash about 9 months before the first scene of the book, she's just drawn away from her entire life. She quit cheerleading, she quit hanging out with all of her old friends, she quit journalism, and most of all, she quit writing, which was a huge part of her life and a huge part of her relationship with her sister who is also her best friend. And what makes it really hard for her is she was in the car with her sister when the crash happened, and she lived, but her sister didn't. And Violet cannot wait for the future to happen. At the beginning of every chapter, it says how many more days until graduation, because Violet is counting them down, just like crossing every one of them off. And now she's just fighting everyone with the phrase, I'm not ready. For her parents, her counselors, her friends. She's fighting life with the phrase, I'm not ready. And everyone just accepts that. Except for Finch. After the scene up on the bell tower, Finch decides to befriend Violet. He asks her, in front of the entire class, by the way, to be his partner for this Wander Indiana project for their history class, and she has no choice to accept, even though she doesn't want to do the project. She just wants to say, I'm not ready. And slowly they become friends, and Violet becomes less annoyed with Finch, and then they become a little bit more. So through the school project and then their newfound friendship, which turns into a romance, Violet learns to live again. She starts writing, she gets in a car again, which she hasn't done since the accident, and she learns to stop feeling guilty about continuing to live when Eleanor couldn't. Eleanor's her sister, I think I mentioned that. But while Violet is getting more comfortable in the world, Finch's world is slowly shrinking. And then the book gets serious. And I'm not gonna spoil it for you, so I'm gonna stop there, unless you've already read it and you want to stay with me and discuss everything else that happens. So goodbye to everyone who just wanted the background. Goodbye to everyone who just wanted nothing. You should have left a while ago. Come back when you've read the book. And welcome, spoiler people! You have read the book. So now I'm going to begin talking more about my opinions on the book, and I'm not going to give as much backstory because I'm assuming you know what I'm talking about. So throughout the whole book, Finch is awake, right? At the beginning of every chapter, he's like, day something of being awake, but it seems towards the end of the book, he starts to go to sleep, right? So that really confused me. We never really did see the asleep. We just heard him talking about it. Or maybe at the end, if he had used the same metaphors he had before when he was describing the asleep to tell us he was now in it, just some kind of indication of whether he fell asleep at the end, because I really need to know that. Seems like he was still fighting at the end, but then he died. He drowns himself in a really romantic place that he shared with Violet. And I thought that was just a little traumatizing for her. Like, I'm not sure how Violet copes. I think she does because at the end, she begins the healing process. But still, like, how do you cope with that? Your sister goes and then your boyfriend. And then at the end, when the author had that little author's note about how she was a survivor of suicide as well, I just felt so much sympathy to her. If you are out there, Jennifer Niven, you are a really brave person, and I really respect you for writing this book. It must have been a hard thing to do for you. I'm glad you chose to share it with the world of readers. Although there were a few things that I disliked. One of them was, at the end, it seemed very Paper Towns-ish, where Finch just disappears, and he's like sending all these cryptic messages. You know, Margot leaves, and then Quentin has all these clues that she left, and he has to discover, and then go on a road trip. And it felt like she did the same thing, but only in that last quarter or so of the book. So in Paper Towns, that was the whole plot, but here it was just that little bit. Although I did like that at the end, it went only into Violet's perspective, because I feel at the beginning, even though we were hearing from both of them, I felt we were hearing more of Finch's story and going more into depth with Finch. So I'm glad that they did that, balanced everything out. I think that worked really well. And despite everything, this book was really funny. The hopping back on the camel reference, just how witty Finch is at the beginning and all of his cute little comments, and the way he keeps changing his personality and all of his different accents, it was priceless. And I think the book really did need that. It needed that element of humor. Otherwise, it would just be a really depressing book. Well, that's about all I have to say about All the Bright Places by Jennifer Niven. I know I could definitely continue on and just keep listing parts of the book which I loved and hated and why, but I'm not going to bore you with that, and instead I'm going to ask you whether you've read the book and whether you liked it, and if you haven't read the book, whether you plan on reading it now. So that's it for this video. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe so I can see you soon.